What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Coding with Kevin. Today we are going to learn how to connect a SQL Server database to a React and Node.js project. I hope you're as excited as I am. Without further ado, let's go. Alright, before we jump into things, make sure you hit the like button. That really helps my channel out. If you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing. And a way that you can support my channel is in one of the links below. One of them is with BlockFi, which is a cryptocurrency investment platform. Something that you might want to buy and hold like a savings account, except it pays you a lot better interest and actually in cryptocurrency. So I really appreciate all the support you guys give me, and let's talk about today's topic. So I first got this idea because a lot of students are graduating computer science degrees, and some of them just want to focus on data. One of the best ways that you can interview successfully is if you can actually show the data from your database that you created and actually connect it to a UI and visually display things for the person you're interviewing with. Thus, today is going to be part one of a two-part series. We're going to create the SQL Server database and connect it to Node.js today. And then in my next video, we're going to take that data and display it on the UI and maybe figure out a way to actually send data from the UI to the server and vice versa. All right, well, I hope you're ready. I'll try to keep things as concise as I can. And again, I probably won't be able to answer any technical problems you guys are having just because each computer does have different setups. Because of MySQL Server, you might run into a few issues. The art of Googling is another aspect of being a good developer. So if you get stuck, definitely just take a break, go ahead and Google it and come on back when you're ready. Also, the previous video, the full stack coding challenge, is the preface to the structure that I have set up in the video that you're about to see. Definitely make sure you go ahead and complete that before jumping into this, because it's going to make it a lot easier when we actually connect to Node.js and then start sending things from the front end to the server. So if you haven't already, make sure you download SQL Server Management Studio. Also get SQL Server itself downloaded. I personally used the Express version. Once you get that situated, go ahead and open the bad boy up, and you're going to be greeted with something that looks kind of like this. Personally, I have just Windows authentication on. There's going to be a slew of options. Just definitely make sure what's best for your own computer. Go ahead, click connect, and now we're going to be in our Explorer. So first thing we're going to do is go here to database. We're going to go ahead and right click, new database. And just to make it simple, we're going to call it SQL tutorial. Once that's done, click OK, and it will go ahead and create the database. We expand it, we see a bunch of things here. We're not going to go into many of them. We're only going to focus on tables. Now we're going to go ahead and click new query, and we're going to create our first table. So we're going to do create table, and we'll call it employee demographics. Okay, and then we're going to have a couple columns. We're going to have the column of employee ID, and then we're going to have that just be an integer. Next is going to be first name. It's going to be a varchar. Last name. Then we're going to have an age. That'll be an integer. And then we're going to have gender, which again will be varchar. So once we do that, we're going to go ahead and execute. We can see it executed successfully. And now if we expand the tables, we can see here that employee demographics is now populated. So next step is we're going to comment this out. And we're going to insert into employee demographics, our values, which will be 1001, and we're going to use the office character Jim Halpert. He is, I don't know, I like to think he's 30, and he is male. So now if we go ahead, click execute, one row affected, great. If you bring your mouse over to here and right click on the employee demographics, we can choose select top 1000 rows. When we do that, we see here that Jim Halpert has been inserted into our table. So in order to make sure that we can configure a user on Node.js to access the SQL Server, I'm going to go ahead here and right click on logins and create a new login. Okay, I'm going to do SQL Server authentication. So I'm going to call this coding with Kevin, and my password is going to be foo and foo. I'm going to uncheck these and I'm going to click OK. All right, I'm going to go back into it, properties, great, user mapping. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I check SQL tutorial and just make DB owner. These will give us write permissions and read permissions to the database. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is just double check what our port the SQL Server is running on. And on a Windows machine, you go ahead and Windows button R, and we're going to type in compmgmt.msc. You can kind of see it there. That's going to open up our computer management tool. When we go to services and applications, SQL Server configuration, SQL Server network configuration, protocols. What you want to make sure is that TCP is enabled. If it's not, go ahead and hit properties, enabled to yes. Then we're going to go into the IP addresses field, and we're going to scroll all the way down to IP all. We're going to make note of the TCP port, and mine is running on 1433. So if you do have to edit the TCP port, you're then going to want to go here to your Windows search bar, type in services, and we're going to want to go ahead and actually restart SQL Server. So I'm going to scroll all the way down, and when I can see SQL Server, SQL Express, I'm going to go ahead, right click on it, and restart. This is important because the changes to the port won't take effect until you restart the server. With that all done, we're going to go ahead and jump over to VS Code. And I mentioned just in the intro that if you haven't done something like this before, then you're going to want to go ahead and go back to the video I recommended, because we do have basic Node and Express server set up, and that's also integrated here with our front end. So I'm not going to go ahead and walk through resetting all that up. Just go ahead and watch that previous video. Jump back in when you're ready. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal. I'm going to make a directory called db files. I'm going to cd into that. And I'm going to make a couple files here. We're going to call it dbconfig.js, and we're going to do db operation.js. Great, and you can see here that they've been populated. In our config file, we're going to go ahead and make some basic configurations so we can connect really easy to MySQL Server. We're going to do const config. We're going to have a user. Mine is coding with Kevin. Yours is going to be whatever you created for yourself. Password, again, I said mine was foo. My server, how I figured my server out is I go over here. when I clicked connect, my server name is here before the slash. If you just installed it, your server name will be that same thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this, go back into VS Code. All right, and the database we're going to connect to, we called it SQL tutorial. And then now we're just gonna add a couple options here. And to be honest, I don't know if all of these are necessary, but having them in helped everything to work for me. So you can do whatever you want. These are the options I passed in. So trust server certificate, true. Trust connection I set to false. Enable ARITHABORT, true. And then instance name is, the instance name is what comes after this, SQL Express. Boom. All right, and then for port, I'm putting 1433. So we're gonna go ahead and module dot export. Okay, that is our config file. All right, so then we're gonna go here to dboperations.js. I made this as just having an organized place to put our database specific commands into. So const config is going to equal, I like to do this tab spacing here, and I'll explain why. It allows us to have, you know, if for some reason we had a super long name, we could do SQL connection to server, right? We can then just tab this over, and then everything just lines up just a lot cleaner. It looks nice. I don't know, I like it. Dealer's choice, you can do whatever you want. I like it when things are clean and they look organized. But we do see here that we need to install a npm package. So we are going to go ahead and do npm I mssql --save. We'll let that install here real quick. Great, it's installed. So we're going to jump down and we're going to write a quick function to get the employees from the database. So const get employees. It's going to be an async function, and we're going to do a try catch here. We're going to let pool equals await SQL dot connect, and then we're going to send our config there. And then we're going to let employees equals pool dot request. We're going to make a query, and the query is going to be select all from employee demographic. Is it demographic or demographics? What did we say? Demographics, plural. All right, we're going to go ahead and then log. We're going to log employees, and we're also going to return employees. Okay, and then we need a catch. And then we're just going to log the error. Bada boom. All right, so now we're going to go ahead into our server.js, and we're going to comment out essentially all of this for right now. Right above the app.list, I'm going to make a couple spaces. I'm going to go ahead and add in db, oops, tab that here, operations, operation, singular. I don't think that's recommending the best. Oh, I guess it was. Cool. DB files and then DB operation, comma. So we're going to go ahead and write just a nice quick thing. It's DB operation dot get employees. Do it then. Get the response, and we'll console log the response. Let's see if that works. So here, I did need to add in package JSON. I want to do server, and we're going to do nodemon server.js, and then add a comma at the end there. So now we can do npm run server, and it's going to start nodemon, and I can see here that we have some issues. The issue is here, and we just forgot to export get employees. So we'll do module.exports, get employees. That should be good. Save it. Awesome. So we can see here we have some more errors. Response is not defined. Cool. And that is probably because here, let me look into that. All right, so if I want to look into it here, we're going to go to server.js. And lo and behold, I have res. So save that. Hey, there it is. Look at that. So we can see here that we have connected to the database and we're printing out Jim Halpert, all that stuff. If we want to get real granular, which we will want to, we're going to do record set, and then if we save that, well, it gives us an undefined, which is something we don't want. So let's figure that out. And it looks like I just have a capital there. So that will give us spitting out just an array of objects, and right now the only object contains our only employee of Jim Halpert. So that's fantastic. Now let's write a operation for creating an employee. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy that, and how I did that, by the way, is just Shift Alt down. It's a nice VS Code shortcut. So I'm going to do create employee. We're going to go here, employee, and then we're going to keep everything pretty similar. Instead of select, though, we are going to do our same thing we did for Jim. We're going to do insert into employee demographics and values. Okay, I'm going to enter down to the next line. I know it doesn't really like that, but this is how we're going to solve it, because we're going to need to add some variables into this string here. But just to keep going for now, we're going to do employee ID, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy that because we're going to do a couple of them. Since this next one is a string, first name is a string, we have to paste it inside of strings. Same thing with last name. Age doesn't need to be. However, our gender is something that needs to be pasted inside of a string. So we got first name, last name, age, and gender. So let's quickly walk through this. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that. In SQL, we declared that employee ID would be an integer, okay? And then first name, last name, and gender would be essentially a string, right? When we take this format and inject it into a string, it will not inject it with quotes around it. And as we saw in our SQL Server, that we need to have quotes around any varchars, any strings that we want to insert into our database. So that is why I took that approach. By the way, also, if you're having any issues, Google's your best friend. I won't be able to help everybody solve their own issues because everybody's got a different computer. So good part about being a good developer is also the art of Googling. Definitely take advantage of that and rejoin this tutorial when you've got your problem fixed. But now we are going to export our create employee. So we'll go down here, create employees. Awesome. I try to keep things alphabetical. Obviously they're not here, but in the exports, I kind of like to try to be alphabetical. We're going to save that. And then now here in our server, we're going to go ahead and create an employee. We're going to let Pam equal, we're going to create a class actually. So for now, we're just going to go employee 102 Pam Beasley. I think that's how you spell her name. I like to think she's 29, and then she is a female. Great. And we actually, yeah, we're gonna create a class. So up here in the DB files, we're gonna do a new file, and we're gonna do employee.js. Okay. That was my dog. So we're going to create a class constructor that just helps us keep everything a little bit more organized. And then this way we're not rewriting the same thing every single time. So class employee is going to have a constructor, and it's going to take employee ID, first name, last name, age, and gender. Now we're going to do the this assignments. And I will speed up through this so you guys don't have to watch me. Okay, so this is the final product. Now, this class is essentially going to do the same thing if we created Pam equals an object, which is going to be employee ID 1102, so on and so forth, right? So this is essentially going to give us the framework, right? The skeleton of the object without having to recreate it every single time. So what we did in Server.js is we simply said, okay, new employee, and then we assigned it all these parameters. And then now when we console log Pam, it's actually going to be assembled in this format already for us. And I'll show you exactly how that works. So I'm going to quickly just delete that because we don't need it. Save that. Let's go ahead and import it here quick. Tab. Oops, there we go. Gotta target that. And employee. So now if I hover employee, you can see here it's kind of already doing what I talked about. Is it has the the key value pairs already lined up for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and just comment that out so we can see here, if I just console log Pam, you see, it just printed that out for us. So I typically like to use this on the front end, which is what we're gonna do eventually. But this was just a good way to get ahead of it and show you guys how a class constructor works and how it can just make our life a little bit easier here. So we are going to, bada boom, type in our DB operation, and we're gonna do create employee, and we're gonna do Pam. And again, we can look, we're putting employee in there. It's assigning it all, great. And then it's going to go ahead and just return employees to us. And that is, it's a promise. So it's essentially gonna be like, okay, is employees working? Great. So we'll go ahead and save it. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and just uncomment this now so we can make sure it worked. There we go. And so the reason why it worked when I saved it is because in Node.js, we're declaring the function here. So when it runs server.js, it's going to import all of these, look for anything, any function that we define without needing to be called, which this one was just being defined. And the same thing for here, right? Like we can see that it's just running this call. So that's why it worked. Awesome, that was fun. You know, I definitely learned a lot when I was first doing research for this video. I've worked with SQL Server before, but I haven't really connected it to a Node.js project. You know, that was already done before I started working at the company. So I hope you learned something as well. I hope this is helpful for you guys. If it is, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you all. Until next time, guys, take care.